Speaker, sir, for recognizing the Member of Parliament for East Harare to make contribution to this motion, traditional motion that is moved by the Prime Minister. I'd like to thank him for moving this motion, allowing us to make some contributions and discussions and debate on this traditional sine die motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, before contributing further, I would just like to also join others, particularly joining the Prime Minister in conveying condolences to our neighbours and Wantoks and friends and families in Vanuatu who are going through such a hard time at the moment with the earthquake that struck them a few days ago. And I stand with the Prime Minister in whatever the government might want to do to support in any way we can to alleviate the suffering that our neighbours are undergoing at the moment. And of course, in connection to that, supporting also what's mentioned by the Minister for Health as he also prepares our contributions towards such an effort. I welcome that. Mr. Speaker, sir, also I'd like to congratulate at this time the member for Maringe, Kokota, for her election as the Deputy Speaker for this August body, this House, for the 12th Parliament. It's indeed a historic occasion that we have a female representing this Parliament as your Deputy for this 12th Parliament. And on behalf of the people of East Harare, we would like to warmly congratulate the member for Maringe and Kokota for her ascension to that very important role as your Deputy, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, earlier this morning we were delayed a bit in Parliament because a number of us were attending opening of a terminal that we have come to learn is the biggest domestic ports terminal in the South Pacific. That is such a big achievement for us as a nation, but particularly for the SIPA, the Solomon Islands Ports Authority, and all their partners and stakeholders who work together to make this a reality, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think as parliamentarians, as leaders, I think it's only good that we also recognize such a massive achievement that is 100% undertaken by SOE, our own Solomon's state-owned enterprise. And that is something that should chart the way forward for perhaps other SOEs to also recognize. But I would just like to congratulate at this time the CEO, the members of the board of SIPA, all the staff of SIPA, all the partners in the construction of this beautiful building that was formally opened today by the Prime Minister. That was an event that was really a proud moment for all of us who were there to witness. And I'm sure, even though we were not there, just reflecting on that should be a moment of pride for us in Solomon Islands. Like I always like to say, Mr. Speaker, and you know yourself full well, Solomon Islands is a maritime nation. Most of our public travel by sea, so it is only just and fair that a proper facility be set up for the travelling passenger upon their departure or arrival, including international visitors who will be visiting our shores as well. So once again, congratulations to SIPA and the leadership and all for their hard work and their fine achievement. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think we've heard of achievements that the government has already done in the short time that they've been in government since the election. I would like to congratulate the Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, Ministers of the Crown, backbenchers, all those in GNAT and the coalition. I would like to congratulate them for work that they have done over the past few months that they have led this nation. And there were some achievements that were listed, and those need to be recognized as well. At the same time, we are fully aware that we continue to struggle as a nation as well, continue to have obstacles in front of us that we need to navigate and overcome, and that will continue for a while, Mr. Speaker, sir, and it will be something that we will continuously have to deal with it as we move forward as a nation, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think some of the indicators in terms of our successes were perhaps given in Parliament, on the floor of Parliament, by the Prime Minister, outlining a number of achievements over the last 7 months. But I would also like to add on top of that the importance of looking at other indicators as well, beyond just these listing of achievements. And these are the Human Development Index, or the HDI, one of those main ones that also governs whether we qualify to graduate, as you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, from the LDC group. And I think if you do an analysis on that HDI over the past few years, you will find that we have been struggling, perhaps sluggish, perhaps in some of the sectors we have been actually going backwards a little bit. And I think that is the indicators that we should be keeping an eye on as government, as we continue to try and get our people and the nation on track towards graduation, Mr. Speaker, sir. It's good to have a look at the Human Development Index, to see our scores there as assessed and analyzed by those, particularly at the United Nations, that do look after this index and allow us to perhaps guide our policies as to where we might need to perhaps focus a little bit more further to what we're already doing, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think if you look into that, you will find that the field of education is one particular angle or one particular sector that we will need to focus on it, perhaps much more strongly. Of course, health and education are the two biggest factors within these HDI, or the Human Development Index, as it very much focuses, as you know, on the social aspect of a nation. So the idea that we need to look into these very important sectors is something that the Parliament is fully aware of, because as we know, the biggest parts of our budget are always education and health. As we have seen this year, I think I would like to recognize as well the contribution towards the health and the education sector in particular, with an increase that is quite marked there, and the largest portion of the budget going to education. And that is reflective as well in the focus that we need to do to lift up the scores and our ranking as a nation in the Human Development Index. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it's fair to say that the expenditure that we will continue to do as a nation or as a government is something that will continue to be with us now and forever. Expenditure will only increase. That is something that we know and we need to accept, that this is something, a fact of life in a country like ours. We know, as was mentioned by the Minister of Health, that our health system is indeed a free one. It's a one that's based on welfare to those that need it, to all the population that need access to health, and that is going to cost us. The same can be said as well with education. So we know that going forward, our expenditure will only increase. Next year, the budget is expected to go up again. And I think that is something that we all accept here as members of Parliament in recognizing our budget going forward. I think the issue comes into play with the focus on revenue. How do we get ourselves into a space where we can generate more revenue for the government to help balance the expenditure that will continue to increase, Mr. Speaker, sir. And once again, we know that the GDP of the nation that's been forecast for some 2.5% growth for next year is perhaps needs to be doubled, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is where I would like to also perhaps encourage the government to focus more on the picture of improving or increasing our GDP growth. We need to double that to try and outrun our population growth because we have been struggling to outrun our population growth, and with a GDP that's pretty much on par with the population growth, I think we are now feeling the effects. Services will be hard to fund and resource as a growing population comes into this world and this country expecting services that have been perhaps in the past with a smaller population being a bit more accessible to them. So herein lies the big challenge for any government, including ours in the Solomons, the least developed country, one that is already being put forward to graduate out of this status of least developed country. But the need to double at least our GDP would be something that I would welcome as a key policy focus of GNAT going forward. How would you double that? How would a budget work towards doubling that? How can we all contribute? How can the private sector work towards doubling that? What are the incentives we'll need to do, we'll need to make, we'll need to give to allow those in the private sector who will be the engine of growth to drive this GDP growth forward? How are they going to participate here with the help and the support of the government? These are big issues, and we know that government has been dealing with these issues on an everyday basis, but I think more focus would be very helpful in terms of a government taking this challenge and moving forward. We know that agriculture is the base through which or upon which this nation can thrive. We've seen that logging has come in over the past decades and have taken over agriculture, but now we are starting to see waning in the logging, volume as well going out, and the contribution to our GDP and our revenue also starting to wane, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I think it's no big matter to think about. It doesn't take rocket science. Agriculture, fisheries, those are the basis of our nation, Solomon Islands. And I would be one to support whatever the government would want to do in that area. Whatever funding we can do, you can be rest assured that you will have the support from this side of the House, particularly the independent and the independent group. We very much would very much support focus on agriculture. That's why we're very excited about the scientific center that was announced. We look forward to perhaps the fundraising that might need to happen for that to occur. But before moving forward, we really need a good science background in terms of research and development, in terms of our agricultural outputs and what may be needed for us in terms of moving the needle a little bit forward in terms of our agricultural output, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think as a policy, it would be good to have as a baseline value addition in whatever we do, whatever raw produce we make out of Solomon Islands. At least effort must be made to add value to those, particularly before we export them, Mr. Speaker, sir. We know that in the past, even in the mineral sector, that we have added value in country before we exported whatever produce those mines did produce. So it's important for us to just go back towards those and ensuring that we add value to our resources as much as possible before we export them, because that's the best way to get a better returns in terms of our resources. That is beneficial to both the government as well as our people of Solomon Islands. So I think I would like to encourage the government to focus on value addition as a mainstay of any of your policies coming through for next year and moving forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, FDI, foreign direct investment, is also another big one that comes into play here. We know that the amount of money that is circulating within our economy cannot support some of those big investments that we need to take to push us forward. Therefore, we need FDI, foreign direct investment that is targeted. Perhaps could be targeted on things like agriculture and tourism. Perhaps focus on those two sectors and encourage targeted FDI to come in to support these two particular sectors and industries with investors that are genuine and are interested, of course, to make money and profit here in our country, but at the same time also build an industry that we can identify, perhaps like tourism or agriculture. And the incentive will be something that government can give to tourists or tourist investors coming in. How much of a tax holiday will you give? Would it be 5 years? Would it be 10 years? Make it very clear so that all the tourism investors are very clear about what it is. Do we want the difference of those holidays to be reflected in our geographic distribution as well? For example, would the ones development outside of Honiara get a bigger incentive in terms of a bigger tax holiday, a more number of years than the ones in Honiara or closer, that would encourage them to go out and invest in other parts of Solomon Islands that need tourism investment? I mean, these are policy issues that I'm sure GNAT is already looking at and trying to calculate moving forward, Mr. Speaker, sir. Agriculture, we know, forestry, we know, particularly forestry is a renewable resource that we could continue to benefit from, only if we do reforestation properly, Mr. Speaker, sir. If we do that properly, then it is a very, very powerful resource for us that is renewable, that we can come back a few years later and again harvest or reharvest an area that we have already harvested. But I think that needs a proper management of reforestation programs as well. These are very, very important for us. But I think the big part of a policy for any government, including our own Solomon Islands, is the jobs that we create. I think the bottom line should be that all that we do needs to have a benchmark for employment. How many people are we going to be employing through this investment, through this sector, if we give this investment opportunity, the incentives that they need? I think the benchmark should still be employment and job creation. I would like to hear in speeches from the government during finance and presenting a budget to talk about this budget will provide 10,000 jobs, 15,000 jobs. These are the kinds of data, these are the kinds of indicators that gets people like me excited, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because to be fair, I haven't heard as much from our government ministers when they present the budget. We know that job creation is part of the private sector, but the government has a role to enable those jobs to be created through a number of policy interventions, through taxes, through tax holidays, tax exemptions we've been hearing about, but of course also tax credits. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've been waiting to hear anything here about tax credits. I haven't been hearing much about tax credits. All I've been hearing about is tax exemptions. And we know there's a difference, and quite a bit big of a difference, particularly for investors. Some would rather prefer to be part of a regime that provides tax credits than tax exemptions, Mr. Speaker, sir. But all these tools are available for the government of the day to utilize under the policy and the right policy mix that I'm sure GNAT and all your political analysts, political appointees are thinking about. Because this is very important for us as a nation moving forward. So employment, jobs. Mr. Speaker, sir, we drive out today, we see all our youth, a lot of them without jobs. What's the future for them? How can their lives be more meaningful? How can they contribute? How can they feel more valuable when they have income through jobs? Mr. Speaker, sir. So foreign direct investment, yes, in the areas of tourism, agriculture, or whatever sector, but jobs should be the bottom line. How many people now by Waka? Solomon Island is now by Waka. Logota, investments by coming here. Logota, manufacturing, perhaps by coming under this FDI. Mr. Speaker, sir. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we know that the government is now making what I am starting to sense a concerted effort towards perhaps reducing our high cost of electricity. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, is integral to any effort we might want to make to attract investors to our beloved country. Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to bring down the cost of electricity in our nation. We always say that we've been number one on this for too long. We've been number one for too long. Let's become number 2 or 3, or at least somewhere in the top 10, but better still drop out. It will take time, maybe. Maybe there are already plans and policies in place to bring it down. And I continue to look forward to that announcement of a 25% decrease in the next few years of our electricity. But I think one of the big things to do on that particular front is to try and separate a provider from the regulator. Currently, we have a regulator who is also a provider. That is a very rare case in terms of any nation, to have somebody who regulates electricity but is also the provider. And most of the money you referee, but then you strike a two. Blow whistle bar, then you run stop, then you just kick in now. These are issues that I think if we start to address them, Mr. Speaker, sir, and start to liberalize the space of energy, allowing social entrepreneurs to come in and be involved in the access of electricity throughout the Solomon Islands, and we deal on the idea on the basis of volume rather than price, then I think we should be okay, Mr. Speaker, sir. And looking at issues of renewable energy and getting that mix right as well is very, very important and crucial. We're going to be dependent on fossil fuel for some time yet, Mr. Speaker. I've been hearing a lot of promises internationally as well, some commitments made by our government about shifting, but I think the reality is that we will be depending on fossil fuel for still some time. And that is something that we have to accept. But the right energy mix in terms of the sources of energy is what we're looking for, Mr. Speaker, sir. One of the things that I keep hearing over the course of Parliament, the last year, even at the last 11th Parliament as well, is land reform, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is very important. But I am, for one, I'm always hesitant to just call it land reform. I always like to put law in there, land law reform. Because land reform to me doesn't mean anything. What do you mean when you say land reform? You mean reform land how? For me, the real issue, the real crux of it is actually land law reform. We have land law reforms. And I think to focus on that would be better. We have land law, both at the common law level, but also at the customary level. How do we marry those better? That would best help our people to use their land and resources for their own benefits, and yet at the same time provide the right amount of protection for our people as well. It's always important to also play that role of protecting our people. As a responsible government, Mr. Speaker, sir, that should be in all our policies, protecting our people and our resources. We are Solomon Islanders, Mr. Speaker, sir. all of us here in this chamber has a connection to the land through our tribes. We are unlike other countries that when they speak about indigenous people, they seem to be referring to a group of people within the country. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we should be proud that we are a government that is indigenous-led. This parliament is an indigenous parliament already. We should not be talking about indigenous people as people separate from us. We ourselves are indigenous. When they have Indigenous Day, all of us should be able to celebrate that day together with groups that are organizing events around that particular day and not be seen just as a civil society thing. Indigenous. We are all indigenous. And that's something that is unique about us in Solomon Islands. We are all indigenous. All of us here have connections to our land and tribe that we can trace. And that is something that not all parliamentarians around the world can claim. That is unique, and we should continue to respect and also recognize the privilege that it is. In that regard, Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the policy that GNAT could perhaps look into is to focus on how we can address access to natural resources. Put in a process that will allow hearings, consultations when there's a development happening in a customary area, customary land area. We know this happens during the timber utilization hearings for logging operations. We have hearings. We know that there is perhaps ad hoc, one that happens during access to mining, for companies to access the mining site, in the discussions on access agreement and royalties. But I think there needs to be something in place that would guide us whenever there is something that needs to be done on customary land under the name of development. Perhaps a law that needs to be in place that has all the processes in black and white, has all the time frames in black and white, has all the times for objections, all the times for hearings, and there is an outcome at the end of a period. Because I think that's only fair to investors, that they know that there's a process they'll have to go through. But there will be an outcome in a given time frame. Many of these investors, as you know, Mr. Speaker, sir, business, private sector, where time is money. They might be put off an investment just because there's unpredictability in terms of where they want to invest or the area they might want to invest in. I see this linked towards a land law reform agenda as well. But it's important enough to be dealt with quite separately. That I think it's time that we put something in on paper, bring a bill to Parliament that allows us to see what the steps are for consultation. Take that bill all around the country so that our people can have the inputs as well in them. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it's only good that we put something in place like that provides a process, at the same time also balances it, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the need to also protect our people and resources. I think this is important because we know process is as important as the outcome. The way to get to the destination is as important as the destination itself. And I think that's very, very important and very true for us in Solomon Islands. Processes se leva how for go kasim place important sometimes we need now. Place by the casino. That one is something that is done here in Solomons with our different cultures and traditions. But I think it's important that we as a government, or you as a government, GNAT, start to think about these things. Mr. Speaker, may give you some idea now. After motion them lebet fail ba, Samvalman come say, you me waka. You me waka, yeah, waka together. So I'm giving some ideas, whether you take it or leave it. But I'm giving ideas. So here, Samvalman say, keep him idea for new government. You say, you know what? Country me love him, yeah. Me like him give him as much idea as I can, whether I'm good or bad. That one you will know by some. But I think these things, if we do are serious enough about our nation, we should start to look at these issues. Throw money into these issues. You know, I would argue that these kinds of issues are the ones that we need to prioritize. Land law reform, processes of accessing resources, how that ties in with the current work that the Ministry of Lands are already doing in terms of customary boundaries. What is the next step after that, Mr. Speaker, sir? A couple of my tribes in the East Harare region have already done that. And they're sitting back and saying, what next? We've done that. The law says we should do it, we've done that. First ones in Malaita to do it, Mr. Speaker, sir. But then what next, they ask? Well, next could be another law that comes in that allows these tribes that have gone through this to be allowed their own development arms. Set up their own tribal development arms that look after their resources, that the government can look towards recognizing and fund. Mr. Speaker, sir, when an investor from the FDI comes in and selects a place, look at those places that have already got these done. Mr. Speaker, sir, they get priority. Mr. Speaker, sir. And when these investors arrive at the Foreign Investment Board, FIB, the representatives of these tribes should already be sitting there, right at the Foreign Investment Board level. You mean no garem no more nara people no more heren behind now, then place where you mean like invest them, just come behind. Let's put them right in front, Mr. Speaker, sir. We are all indigenous, everyone on our board, every indigenous no more. But the right people that we want to invest in their land need to be there from day one, sitting in these boards. Stark alokata garem people good enough, educated enough, wise enough. Sometimes education, but no much good, yeah. Wise enough, knowledgeable enough to sit, herem now, the pitch of the investor. Want him now like him come do me. Don't let them be at the end. The government doing finished and say, okay, like him come invest. Lolan blue fala. These are important issues, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I, for one, would very much support budget for these sort of things. Big budget. Because I think these can contribute towards transformational. That is in the name of GNAT. These are the transformational issues that we're talking about, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think it's only fair that we give thanks to our development partners. Because I think without them, you, me, by bar, are nowhere now. Mr. Speaker, sir, without our development partners, we would be on a road to nowhere. By you, me struggle, Mr. Speaker, sir. But with our development partners holding our hands and supporting us based on the priorities of the government, Mr. Speaker, sir. Start the Samuel Silo development that they've helped already, Mr. Speaker, but I would just like to dwell on one particular one, and one that allows us to all be sitting here today, Mr. Speaker. The support for our elections. The general elections, the first joint elections. Without the support from Australia, New Zealand and other partners, I think by no sit down here today, Mr. Speaker, sir. By you might get an election, but we no show to election never run good. So I, for one, take my hat off to all our development partners that have contributed one way or another towards supporting our nation and our people, Mr. Speaker, sir. It's so important that we have development partners that are willing to walk with us, listen to us, and help us move forward. Everyone has their own strengths, and that is how we can work together, utilizing those strengths towards our benefit, Mr. Speaker, sir. Some are starting perhaps to do conditions for more assistance. They're starting to put down conditions for us. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would urge our government, the executive, to seriously look at these conditions. What are they? Are they something that we could live with as a government? More importantly, is this something that the country can live with? And if your answer to those would be yes, then why not? These are their taxpayers' money. If they have conditions, let us look at those conditions. More conditions for support for budget? Yes, let's look at them. Seriously. We don't have any other option, Mr. Speaker, sir. If there are partners who are looking to contribute to our budget for all of these very important and transformational policies to be implemented, we will need support, we will need funds. I would urge the government to really look into what these conditions are for supplementary or support to our budget, or budgetary support, Mr. Speaker, sir. I picked up from the Prime Minister that there are partners who are willing to improve and increase even further their budgetary support. Let's look into those conditions. Work together. The only bottom line is that it's in the best interest of our nation, of our people, and that it is truly support and not a loan or count. Mr. Speaker, sir, we just had this morning as well a vote on an amendment to the Constitution. And during my debate on this particular issue of the amendment, I had already told the House that unfortunately I would not be able to support this amendment this time, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also personally told the Prime Minister that I will not be supporting, unfortunately, the amendment this time, Mr. Speaker. And today I voted no. And let me just explain after the vote, as they would like to say at the United Nations, an explanation after the vote, which is just a re-explanation of my statement during the debate. The premise and the basis for me to not support this at this time, I believe, in my own view, is in protection of the Constitution. Our Constitution is the supreme law of our nation. And we were looking to amend an amendment that we had done just a year ago, Mr. Speaker, sir, at the 11th Parliament. And you yourself, Mr. Speaker, was the Speaker of the House at that time. You would have recalled, indeed, check hands that some of us were very hesitant to even support at that time what we thought was very rushed consideration of such an important issue for our nation. I even said, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I hope you will not take something or something for you meet political for you use him no election. You mean no change him constitution no more for some follow you me campaign lahem. Mr. Speaker, sir, I knew full well that if you put 1 year, nothing will happen. Our elections took us to the middle of this year. It will be so hard for this Constituent Assembly to be appointed, set up, do all that we listed for them to do by the 31st of December. A few days away. Mr. Speaker, sir, in a way we were setting up ourselves to fail. But by using the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir. That is why we vote no and allow this to get to when it needs to get to, December 31st, to expire. Then allow government to bring in fresh amendments, perhaps even repeal, bring in fresh amendments. Mr. Speaker, sir, that respects our Constitution, but also respects the process that we will be following towards perhaps a new Constitution, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you know, if you look at Constitution, paper normal with ink, just a few words in here. But this is the word that keeps us. These words in the few pages are what keeps us as a nation together. This is the basis through which we derive our sovereignty. Without that one, you mean law of the jungle here. Look here, Mr. Speaker, sir. You mean law of the jungle. Fittest survive. Survival of the fittest. We now are a law-abiding nation. We need to start acting like this. That narrow political agendas don't come in and impact upon the supreme law of the land for political gain. Me, Emino knew something, and we already mentioned this one at the end of last Parliament when we debated this, Mr. Speaker, sir. In fact, what happened was a failure, an administrative failure. You could call it a political failure. I even call it a parliamentary failure. Because yes, you may run a vote for him. I voted for it. I voted for it. Then this is happening now. I will not vote again for the same thing. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, you know, the man who invented the bulb light, Thomas Edison, from the United States of America, one of the best well-known inventors the world has ever known. Even telephone and record for here America and here music here. These are things attributed to Thomas Edison. You know, he said something that was, I thought, quite profound, Mr. Speaker, sir. This is what he said. He said, the strength of the Constitution lies in the will of the people to defend it. Our Constitution is only as strong as the people who are willing to defend it. If we start to play around with the Constitution, blame me, you may start to chip away law foundation where you may stand up to him, Mr. Speaker. That is why we decide not for vote yes. But as I mentioned, we remain open to seeing what now governments will come after the 31st of December, come back with one new fresh one that takes into consideration a lot that we have heard already in the debate that I think would help that amendment even more applicable, more practicable, and something that you, me, everyone be happy with him moving forward, Mr. Speaker, sir. Amendments about ministers, talking about ministers to prescribe something to do, I don't think belongs in a constitution, Mr. Speaker. That belongs in an act, Mr. Speaker. The Constitution only prescribes, allows for Parliament to prescribe, not for the minister to prescribe, Mr. Speaker, sir. Bring something that would allow the Parliament to prescribe something for Constituent Assembly, and then a new act that comes in that really lists out with all the deadlines and timelines in that new act. I think that's the way to take it seriously moving forward. We respect both our Constitution, at the same time we respect the process, we respect the people that have been waiting for this discussion to happen for years now. Stakasel and spent, Mr. Speaker said. A lot of people actually are interested in this issue. So let us do them justice, Mr. Speaker said, and take it seriously. That is the reason, Mr. Speaker, Nothing to do with them not being transparent or I'm transparent. I am as transparent as I can be. I voted no, openly, here, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I appreciate that the government also appreciates my position on this particular issue. And as you can see or hear from this side of the House, there's mixed responses in the vote, as you would have heard Mr. Speaker say, although we didn't even get to the required number to begin the vote. But you would have heard. And that is allowed on this side of the House. We allow people to vote freely on issues that is as important as this. Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, as we come to Christmas, I would just like to add my voice to all that have done so already, and to wish my own good people of Istarare Merry Christmas to you all. Sorry we couldn't host the usual Christmas games this Christmas because still waiting for funds for come. So I joined my colleague spoke earlier about the need for funds to come in before 31st of December. We have been giving assurances that the funds will be coming, but I think it'll be coming a bit late for some of us and our plans. But just for people Blomi Nomal or Istarare, sorry, games Blomi have postponed this year. You fella continue Nomal with them own games Blue fella we will go at Lahem every Christmas. But on behalf of myself and family, wishing you fella everyone lo Istarare chiefs, elders, church leaders, women, youth, everybody a Merry Christmas and a happy 2025. And then, Mr. Speaker, now it's our turn on behalf of the people of East Are, the chiefs, the elders, church leaders, women and children and youth from East Are, we would like now to convey Merry Christmas greetings to His Excellency the Governor General, Sir and Lady Kapu, Speaker, your good self, Honourable Oti and Madame, Chief Justice, His Lordship, Sir Palmer and Lady Palmer, Prime Minister, Honourable Manele and Madame Manele and family, Ministers and families, your own families, and MPs and families, judicial officers, judges and magistrates, the court, constitutional post holders, public servants, state-owned enterprises, the private sector, church leaders, clergy, civil society leaders, and indeed also Solomon Islanders. Special Merry Christmas greetings, Mr. Speaker, sir, to my own Office of Independence. Thank you to the staff up there who've been working hard all year. We appreciate all your efforts. Mr. Speaker, sir. And once again, as we come to celebrate Christmas, let's all call for peace. Celebrate responsibly, because we look forward to have all of us all back again and our good people of Solomon Islands for the ride ahead 2025. That God will continue to lead, guide and bless this our Solomon Islands. So we thank you once again for the Prime Minister for allowing this debate. I support this motion and I now resume my seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Let me give the floor to the Honourable MP for South Guadalcanal and Minister for Rural Development. You have the floor, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to also contribute to this very important motion of sympathy moved by the Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, before going any further, let me congratulate you on your job well done in overseeing the business of this Honourable House during the sitting of this Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the deliberations on the various important matters in this House were overwhelming at times. Yet, your demeanor and sense of focus on the processes and matters to resolve in this House were well demonstrated, and ensuring the discussions were held in a constructive and acceptable manner. I also wish to thank the three ministries, Ministry of Finance, Treasury, National Planning and Development Coordination, Public Service, and their ministers, permanent secretaries, and officials who tirelessly work in bringing the 2025 budget before the House up to its passing. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister responsible for the Ministry of Rural Development, I wish to reaffirm my ministry commitment in ensuring the important policy recommendation and activities for my ministry are undertaken in good times, and to ensure the people of this nation do benefit from this in 2025. Mr. Speaker, speaking of the 2025 budget, the budget comes at a very crucial time in the tenure of this government. It is the first budget for this government and the one which will demonstrate to the people of this country the government's confidence and commitment to ensure transformative developments are undertaken for each people. Sir, the theme of the budget for 2025 budget recently passed by the House is accelerating accountable and transformative investments, a pathway towards resilient and sustainable economy. This theme, Mr. Speaker, I truly believe is a well-fitting picture of the transformative policy intention of this government for the people of this nation. Mr. Speaker, the intention of the transformative investment policy are obviously to bring progressive economic and social development and change in this country. Let me remind this House that transformative policy cannot transpire into reality if there is absence of unity, cooperation, and responsibility between the government and its people. Mr. Speaker, the government has a lot of responsibilities in making its budget and transformative policies work for our people. I'm sure this government is committed to making this a success for its citizens. Mr. Speaker, let me say this, that the impact of the budget on the lives of the people is what matters the most. Given the majority of our people live and build their livelihoods in the rural areas, it is only fitting that the focus of the government is tend towards the rural sector, which often includes the marginalized and the isolated people in the rural areas. In our context, these marginalized populations are often those who hold the primary rights over the factors of production and economic development, such as land and other natural resources. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is vital that rural-focused investments, such as economic infrastructure, agribusiness, including facilitation of market, both local and international, one other crucial aspect of this transformative agenda and for economic development. A government budget is the tool to achieve such policy intention. I do believe that government budget for 2025 has this primary intention and is originated towards achieving it. Mr. Speaker, since gaining of independence some 45 years ago, Solomon Islands have noted that the gap between rural and urban development sector has not improved. This is a huge challenge for a small developing country as Solomon Islands. It is only fitting, Mr. Speaker, that the government allocate its resources to address these development disparities. At this point, Mr. Speaker, let me thank the government for ensuring our rural population is connected and participate in the development program for the country through the Constituency Development Program and the related Constituency Development Fund. The government aims to see that our people are participating meaningfully in all sectors of development in this country through the CDF. Thus, the budget allocation for the 50th constituency for 2025 is a significant tool for this relationship between the government and its people. Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate once again that this relationship between the government and its people is a two-way responsibility. This is an area that all of us in this House, including our good people in the constituency throughout Solomon Island, needs to know. While the government makes the effort to provide resources to its citizens, our communities and citizens, including ourselves, must also be responsible for the success of the government's development intention for our people. We must all together consider this and put into action our responsibility seriously. On legislative reform, CDF Act 2023, Mr. Speaker, let me now turn to some of the specific governance and management reform which will be featured prominently in our activity come 2025. Mr. Speaker, let me inform this Honorable House and our good people of this country that the Ministry of Rural Development, since beginning of this year, has commenced the implementation of the Constituency Development Act. The Act provides for the management and regulative oversight on the utilization of the Constituency Development Fund under our Constituency Development Program. The CDF Act 2023 is a progressive and forward-looking legislation, meaning that whilst it is already commenced, the Act may need some settling in period before it is fully utilized as intended. All parties who are utilizing the CDF may need some time to be socialized and made familiar with the provision of legislation for its effective implementation. There may also be need for future review on some of its provision where necessary to make it relevant to its context. Mr. Speaker, despite some sentiment raised calling it a half-cooked legislation, the CDF Act 2023, in my view, has provided some progressive and significant reform in how CDF is being managed by MRD and its constituency offices. Such minor but effective legislative change must be celebrated by all of us. On Constituency Development Office, Mr. Speaker, under the CDF Act 2023, I'm pleased to note to this Parliament that one of the key requirements under the Act is for the establishment of the Constituency Development Office. Most, if not all, these have been established, and the 50 offices of all the constituency, including the Constituency Development Offices, project offices, and accountants are now in place and are undertaking their role in their respective offices and constituencies. The constituency offices are the delivery and the primary operation structure of the Constituency Development Program. I appeal to all our people to get familiar with your offices and seek information on your constituency matters through these offices. Mr. Speaker, on such support for the administration and setup of the constituency office, MRD will work with 50 offices to develop a standard operation procedure to ensure that the constituency offices are administering and operating its functions within the provision of the relevant regulation and rules, including of the CDF Act. On Constituency Development Committee, Mr. Speaker, one of the other significant governance structure within the legislative framework of CDF Act is the Constituency Development Committee. So this is a critical governance structure for constituency level, developing a planning, and it is now given guidelines in its roles and responsibility under the new legislation. While it is in its early stage in terms of its setup, CDC are anticipated to play a critical role in the planning and implementation and monitoring of the Constituency Development Program in all constituency and communities throughout Solomon Islands. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I must emphasize here that the success of Constituency Development Program and utilizing the CDF lies in part on the work and oversight of the CDC in each of the constituency over its planning and implementation process. Given these critical roles and responsibility of the CDC, it is important that those appointed to each of the Constituency Development Committee do take their function seriously and execute their mandate with their constituents in more comprehensive, inclusive, and non-discriminative manner. Mr. Speaker, on the CDF regulation, my ministry is working closely with the Attorney General Chamber for the finalization of the regulation and get it to Gazette by the first quarter of 2025. On key activity plans, Mr. Speaker, for 2025, in terms of the key ministry activity for 2025, my ministry will focus on the following key ones. One is on civic education. So, with the commencement of the CDF Act, my ministry has seen it important to connect with communities through civic education programs to support our constituency and people to familiarize with the provision of the Act and how it applies and operationalized in its current form. It is my belief, Mr. Speaker, that it is very important for our constituencies to know the details of the reform brought about by the new Act. When the people are well informed of the detail of the legislation and other regulations and the management requirement, I believe, Mr. Speaker, that our people will also make rational decisions because they have the knowledge and are aware of what is required of them and how the acceptable system and processes of the CDF program work. My ministry has initiated successful awareness program in several constituencies and provinces this year, and this will continue as one of our key activities for 2025. On project monitoring, Mr. Speaker, furthermore, Mr. Speaker, one of the key activities is the ministry will put more emphasis on this project monitoring. Mr. Speaker, project monitoring is a vital process in any development program, and MRD plans to undertake spot monitoring in all the 50 constituencies to gauge the level of project implementation in the constituency, as well as to identify areas which may need improvement in our service delivery and development program. On that note, I call on all constituencies to support and work with my ministry to implement these activities and process in 2025. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those being said about my ministry and work plan for 2025, let me now take this opportunity to thank my good people of South Guadalcanal for their support and cooperation since my return to this Parliament as their Member of Parliament for the next 4 years. Sir, without the support of my constituency and people of South Guadalcanal, the success we achieve in this short period of time will not be possible, and I do thank them for that. Now I wish My good people of South Guru Canal Constituency, a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year 2025. To the Honorable Speaker of Parliament, me also wishing you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. To the Governor General, to the Chief Justice and members of the Judiciary, the Honorable Prime Minister, and my honorable independent groups, all the public servants and ministry, including my Ministry of Rural Development, all our premiers and our provincial government, and the people of the 50th constituency. Me like say also me wishing you all a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year 2025. Mr. Speaker, with these few remarks, I support the motion and resume my seat.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Let me give the floor to this side. Honourable MP for North Malaita, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to talk a little bit. Mr. Speaker, as we bring this session to a close, Senator, we mark the conclusion of yet another chapter in our ongoing journey of governance and public service. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a moment to reflect on the significance of what we have shared over the past months. Today has been a testament to the power of dialogue, unity, and our shared commitment to creating a bright future for our people. Mr. Speaker, over the course of the 8 months, we have witnessed and faced a lot of challenges, celebrated milestone achievements, and engaged in spirited debates, all with the shared goal of serving the people who have entrusted us with their hopes and aspirations. In respect, Mr. Speaker, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to each of you, our lawmakers, staff, and supporters, whose dedication and hard work have made this session possible. Your contributions, whether seen or unseen, are the foundation upon which our democracy thrives. Let us carry with us the lessons we have learned and the bonds we have strengthened. May we return to our communities inspired to continue the work that began here, with a renewed and common vision for the path ahead. Mr. Speaker, we have encountered challenges that have tested the very fabric of our people and nation, range from political discord, policy commitment, economic challenges, and our ambitions to deliver services effectively and efficiently to our people on a daily basis. Yet, through it all, Mr. Speaker, one truth remains unshaken. Our strength lies in our unity. Mr. Speaker, however, we managed to collectively make significant achievements from both benches, especially the passing of the budget for 2025, which I acknowledge the Finance Minister and the General Government for this one. Mr. Speaker, we have demonstrated resilience in the face of all economic challenges. We have made provisions for the sectors of the government, Mr. Speaker. These achievements remind us of the power of purposeful governance. Thank you, Janet. Mr. Speaker, let me remind the executive government to put more emphasis and make full use of the 2025 budget allocations. We cannot afford complacency. Our people are not interested in our political posturings. They care about outcomes. While progress has been made, challenges remain. Families in our communities still struggle to make ends. Our youth full of potential seeks opportunities that remain just out of reach. Our environment, the bedrock of our existence, demands urgent action. Our people deserve better roads, access to quality education, better health services, provide more job opportunities, and the policy that delivers real impacts, Mr. Speaker. Yet, Mr. Speaker, let us be bold. Let us be courageous. Together, we can chart a path toward prosperity, equity, and sustainability. Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a few comments on the Constituency Assembly Bill 2024. Mr. Speaker, this is more than just a legal document. It is a promise. It is a covenant between this 12th Parliament and our people. Built on the pillars of justice, equality, and freedom. It must reflect our values, protect our diversity, and create opportunities for every citizen to thrive, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that our decisions guarantees the rights of every individual, safeguards the rule of law, promotes accountability, and every level of governance. Let us build a system where the voices of the marginalized are amplified and no one is left behind. Mr. Speaker, let us not forget the weight of the mandates we carry. The voices of our people, diverse, vibrant, and resolute, resonate within these walls. They demand action, vision, and courage. They demand solutions to the pressing challenges of our time. The strengthening of our institutions, the equitable distribution of resources are the unyielding defenses of justice and liberty, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I again wish to make a few comments to the motion of no confidence that was withdrawn 2 or 3 days ago in this floor of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is a test the accountability of leadership, current leadership, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these are testaments showing together we can rise, together we can thrive, and together we are unstoppable as one people and one nation. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. This Parliament must be a theatre for personal ambitions. Our debates must not be marred by division. For what we decide here transcends any one individual's party or factions. Our nation's destiny depends on our unity and purpose, and the drive to protect our very own people and our resources. Mr. Speaker, as we anticipate the challenges of year 2025, I'm reminding each of us to think not about what divides us, but what unites us, Mr. Speaker. Let us unite and a shared vision, a vision of prosperous, peaceful, and inclusive nation, where every citizen has the opportunity to thrive. Let us work together to address the challenges that face us, not as isolated functions, as a united people bound by our collective destiny, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our unity requires sacrifice. It demands patience, dialogue, and compromise. But the rewards of unity far outweighs the cost. Together we can create a society where justice prevails, where the dreams of every individual are valued, and where our diversity becomes the cornerstones of our strength, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us be reminded of the values that have always guided us: respect, resilience, and the spirit of togetherness. Let us pledge today to work towards a Solomon Island that is not only united, but also thriving, peaceful, and proud. Mr. Speaker, finally, to my good people of North Malta constituency, the community leaders, women and children, youths lying crippled death, supporters, and my family in particular, I assure you.
Okay, if I could, sorry to interrupt the honourable member. But Mr. Speaker, it is now 4:30 p.m. I seek your consent to move a suspension of Standing Order 10 in accordance with Standing Order 81.
Permission leave granted, Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Standing Order 10 be suspended in accordance with Standing Order 81 to permit the continuation of business until adjourned by the Speaker in accordance with Standing Order 10.5.
Thank you, honourable members. Unless any other member wishes to comment on this motion, I will put a question. And the question here is that Standing Order 10 be suspended in accordance with Standing Order 81 to permit the continuation of business until adjourned by the Speaker in accordance with Standing Order 10.5. All those in favour say aye. All those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Standing Order 10 therefore stands suspended. We may continue the business until adjourned by the Speaker in accordance with Standing Order 10. We continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, to my good people of North Malta constituency, community leaders, women and children, youth, lying crippled in them, supporters, and my family in particular, I ask you that my commitment to your welfare and progress remains unwavering. May I also take this opportunity to thank you for your continuous and unwavering support and hope of building a prosperous North Malta constituency. To all the sport fans, supporters, and the local organizing committee of this year's Christmas Games tournament, I wish you all an enjoyable time. Let us align on connecting ourselves with the vision of united in action, resilience in all adversities. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and may we reconvene in year 2025 with greater resolve and clarity of purpose. Wishing all a happy Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year 2025. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Giving the floor to the Honourable Minister for Education and Human Resource Development and MP for South Threshold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To recognize the member for South Threshold giving this opportunity to contribute towards this motion put forward by our Prime Minister. As we adjourn Senate Day on the first regular session of this 12th Parliament, allow me, Speaker, for me to identify or inform the House with a few achievements and challenges we have encountered so far in reforming or rethinking of our education system and opportunities that lie ahead. Of Parliament conduct themselves in accordance to the standing orders of the National Parliament. As a new MP